Boy, they have two nice cars and I'm driving around a clunker. Look how much nicer their house is than mine. Boy, I wish I could be part of a family like theirs. How come they got the promotion and I didn't? Why is their ministry at church always praised and mine is overlooked? Have you ever heard something like that being said? Have you ever said that yourself? Have you ever thought that? Welcome to Wisdom from the Word. This is episode 102 entitled The Green-Eyed Monster. The green-eyed monster phrase came from Shakespeare's play Othello. And of course, it's jealousy personified. And we know that jealousy is not a good thing, generally speaking. Song of Solomon 8:6 says, jealousy is as cruel as the grave. I've struggled with jealousy at times in my life. Not usually saying it out loud, but you work in ministry sometimes and you feel like you're unnoticed, or you don't make as much money and somebody comments on your low salary and you get jealous of that. And so we all may struggle with that in different areas. I have green eyes, but I don't want to struggle with the green-eyed monster. We're going to talk about that today. Jealousy is a feeling of unhappiness and anger because someone has something or someone that you want. Envy kind of goes along with it. It's a desire to have a quality, possession, or other desirable attribute belonging to someone else. Proverbs 14:30 says, envy is the rottenness of the bones. So as the Bible describes jealousy and envy here, they're not good things. They're a sinful emotion most of the time. Now, the Bible talks about God being a jealous God, and we know he isn't sinful, so that wouldn't be sinful jealousy. He has a right to be jealous over his children. Also, he should not share his glory with anyone else. But today, we're going to look at that destructive jealousy or destructive envy in our lives. And the problem with jealousy is it distorts our view. It doesn't give us a proper perspective. Now, there were some people in the Bible who were jealous or envious. Starts in the book of Genesis. Cain was jealous of Abel, that God accepted Cain's offering but not his. Well, it's because Abel did the right thing. But what it did, it ended up making Cain angry so much that he killed his brother. Rachel and Leah were sisters. And of course, they got married to the same man, which is why God has one man, one woman together for marriage. And it caused problems. Genesis 30 verse 1, it says, and when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister. And it ended up giving the handmaid and children, it caused a lot of problems. Joseph's brothers very much envied him. Now, part of that was Jacob's fault. He did show some favoritism, but their envy was very obvious. Genesis 37:11 says, and his brothers envied him. Acts 7:9 says, and the patriarchs, moved with envy, sold Joseph into Egypt, but God was with him. So we know God worked the story out, but they did things, sold their brother into slavery, basically thinking he was dead because they were envious. Aaron and Miriam with their brother Moses. In Numbers chapter 12, it says there in verse 2, and they said, this is Miriam and Aaron, hath the Lord indeed spoken only by Moses? Hath he not spoken also by us? And the Lord heard it. They were jealous of the position that Moses had. Wow. And we know that Miriam was struck with leprosy temporarily, and there was punishments meted out because of that jealousy. Another big example of that is King Saul toward David. Saul has slain his thousands. David has slain his 10,000. Ooh. 1 Samuel 18:9 says, and Saul eyed David from that day forward. That word eyed literally means eyed him with jealousy. And I find that interesting because the Bible uses the word eyed there, and we call it the green-eyed monster. Just saying. It's free. And what did he do? He tried to kill David multiple times. His perspective was so skewed. He thought David was his enemy, and he wasn't. He even was unkind to Jonathan because he was David's friend. And then in the New Testament, the chief priests took Jesus and had him crucified because of envy. Mark 15:10 says, "For he knew that the chief priests had delivered him for or because of envy." Now we know that the crucifixion was part of God's plan, but that envy that they had was wrong. They were envious that Jesus was popular with the common people. So we see in these stories of the Bible that envy and jealousy led to some major problems. That's just a little thought of jealousy, just a little. We got to be careful because that grows and leads to other things. So if we have some jealousy and envy in our hearts, even when we may never say, but we wish we had somebody else's life or somebody else's children or somebody else's whatever, what do we do about it? Well, first of all, what we do with any sin is we need to recognize it and confess it. As we quoted this verse many times, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. 1 John 1:9. We recognize that jealousy in our life and confess it. Then we need to pray for and learn to be content. There's a verse there in Philippians chapter 4, verse 11. Paul says, "Not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am therewith to be content." Be content with what you have, the marriage that you have as compared to somebody else. It doesn't mean you don't work on your marriage, but you want to have a contentment about that, about your personality, about your looks, instead of always looking at somebody else and I want this, I want that. Have that contentment. It's a process. We need to pray for it and we need to learn it. Then we also need to rejoice when others are blessed. When somebody gets that promotion, somebody gets that praise, somebody has that nice car or that nice home that you don't have. Romans 12:15 says, "Rejoice with them that do rejoice." Be happy for that person and God's blessing upon their lives. And then lastly, praise and thank God for all he has done for you. Psalm 100 verse 4 says, "Enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise." We have so much to be thankful for in our lives. We just need to look at that rather than looking at somebody else and what they have. Look at what God has blessed us with. The salvation that we have, the family that we have, the health that we do have. Many times we think we are worse off than everybody else, but that's not the case. So if we do those things, we can fight that green-eyed monster. Because we know, as the Bible showed us, jealousy leads to other sins, and there's dire consequences many times. We shouldn't take it lightly. God doesn't take it lightly. I found this poem I thought was excellent. It's called "The Green-Eyed Demon," and it really deals with jealousy and also talks about how to get it out of our hearts. So let me read it to you. It says, "A shadow falls, a chilling breeze, whispering doubts among the trees. Jealousy's hand, a chilling touch, it whispers, you want what they have so much. The heart grows cold, the spirit weak, as envy's fire begins to speak. A green-eyed demon, fierce and bold, a story of loss forever told. It twists the truth, it warps the view, making what's good seem false and new. It fuels suspicion, doubt, and fear, and leaves a lonely soul to sear. Love's tender flame, it starts to wane, replaced by anger, grief, and pain. Friendships crumble, bonds unwind, as jealousy leaves pain behind. So guard your heart and choose to see the beauty in what is meant for thee. For jealousy's path leads to despair, a barren wasteland beyond compare." So don't let the green-eyed monster cause problems in your life. Defeat that green-eyed monster by confessing it, by praying, having that contented spirit, rejoicing with others, and then praising and thanking God for all he has done. Let's strive to do that this week. God bless you. I'll see you next time.